Any second now, and here we go. We are live, Steve.
We are live. To paraphrase a disgraced former TV talk show host, let's do it live. And yes, we are. We are live. And for those who aren't with us right now live, welcome to the DLR Cast, the only podcast by and for fans of David Lee Roth, with two fans, not fanboys, who combined barely have more hair than Dave currently has. Probably, as always, Darren, it's great
allegedly.
to see you.
Allegedly, Steve. You don't want to get the lawyers already, hot on our trails. Usually you want the scandalous stuff to be towards the end. So that way the lawyers, they're not listening. But back to you. Are you good, Steve?
I'm great, man. We got a lot. We're doing this live because why the hell not? It's fun. But we've got a bunch of, as usual, a potpourri of various Dave tidbits, if you will. Some cool news, some things happening Van Halen wise, some cool Dave stuff we can talk about. Things are a little bit exciting.
Yeah. So one of the loyal listeners, I think it was Daryl Albert, said on Twitter after I put a couple hours ago that we were going live, they said, "Oh, emergency episode. You guys, you guys must want to talk about the leaks." No, Steve and I were actually going to tape today, and it's a good thing that happened today.
It's very fortuitous.
But I just anticipated a tough episode. So I have 3 drinks here. One has alcohol in it, 2 do not. So if you see me drinking a lot, it's, the young people, we have to stay hydrated, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And I see we've got our first comment there. We'll put it up on the screen. That is from Terry, or T-Bone. Great podcaster who's been very supportive of DLR Cast, DLR Book, etc. So thanks for listening, Terry. And Steve, can you say it? Can you say what Terry said the correct way?
We'll do it live. We'll do it live. I think he dropped a couple F-bombs in there too. If you listen to the whole thing, it's hilarious.
Indeed. So I took you way off track here.
Yes.
Do we want to talk about Mr. James T. Vega first and foremost?
Yes. All right. For those, I'm sure folks who will hear this already will have already known, but today, roughly about 10 hours ago, I don't know who James T. Vega is. I had never heard of him.
I do.
Okay, we'll get to that. But I immediately subscribed. But here's the big news. There's he dropped about 24 hours of various videos of outtakes, the hot outtakes from the Hot for Teacher video shoot, outtakes from Panama, a bunch of stuff from 78, a bunch of stuff from Donington. It's freaking wild and fascinating. This is a really cool, obviously behind the scenes look into so many things that Van Halen wise. I mean, it's just I lost a lot of time earlier today watching the Hot for Teacher, both Hot for Teacher outtake videos in Panama. What were your thoughts?
Yeah. So I've only admittedly watched some of the Hot for Teacher thing. I'm one of those people where I kind of prolong the thing that I'm going to enjoy. I want to savor it. So I'm afraid to watch it because I'm never going to have that experience again. I really want to savor it, not background watch. So I only watched some Hot for Teacher. I clipped a couple of things that I put on this YouTube channel right here that I thought were kind of funny. Like, for example, how times. So watching the Alex Van Halen turning on the swivel chair in the doctor's uniform with the cigarette in his mouth, multiple takes.
Right. Multiple takes. Remember the dance line where all of them are in the red suits?
Oh yeah.
Right. And they're doing that multiple takes. And I was picking up various cues. I mean, they look like they were having a blast. Whether it was the second take or the 10th take, they're smiling. Michael Anthony's having a great time. It was really cool to see the takes. I'll tell you, the part, was it the second verse or whatever, where Dave's facing the camera, the woman's dancing behind him. You could see the different takes there and what he was playing with as far as, I'm going to do this cool look. I'm going to give this a little pout here. It was just really cool to see what didn't make the video and evolved into the final product of the video. I also really loved the bit where there was multiple takes of Dave going down the fire pole in Hot for Teacher in that part of the video. It was really some really cool stuff. I mean, I'll tell you this though, it was kind of funny. It dawned on me after I'm mesmerized by this stuff. It's like, oh, I've been watching about 25 minutes of silent video. There's no audio. It's just the video takes.
Yeah, it does go in and out of some of these videos. And hola, JJ Suarez. I can tell you're a big fan of Sonrisa Salvaje if you're just seeing us with the hola and the como and okay. Anyway, I love the fact that all this happened. In a way, I'm kind of sad that all of it hit at the same time. Although somebody tipped me off that this is not all of it.
It's
So
a it's a lot to digest. I haven't even got
yeah,
into the 78 stuff. I just
yeah.
and I know the stuff from was it from Donington, or there was a couple other videos. They start out with some, and maybe it was even, I can't remember, maybe it was Hot for Teacher, but there's some portions of it where was it beginning of the video where it's live, it's live audio from whatever show on the 84 tour. As some end basically the last 30 seconds of the songs. It was pretty wild.
So yes, the icy hot 66. Just letting you guys know there's tons more video. This is the tip of the iceberg. That's what I've heard. And so this is one of those things where I don't share everything that I hear on the DLR cast because first off, you would be giving up your sources. Second, you might be leaving yourself up to some litigation. There's been some lawsuits and threats of lawsuits to people around Van Halen over the years. But somebody about a year and a half ago, I alluded to this on the DLR cast. Somebody had told me that they were aware of a video project that Alex was working on. And I think I said that. And somebody independent of that had mentioned that to me, that they knew about a video project that was going on of stuff from the 80s. Now this had stuff from the 70s. So the first step of it is me going, okay, I think that's what this was, that this was an intentional DVD or documentary. Because if you notice, the note said from the canned or the canceled Van Halen Chronicles documentary. That was the term that you heard, Steve?
Right. Chronicles jumped out at me. Yeah. I mean, one, because it was misspelled at on one of the videos,
Yes.
but that's just me. Sorry. But I was wondering if that was just his own titling of it, or was if it's something rang a bell and that was it, that there was something that we may have talked about off mic about a documentary that might never be, or I'm not even sure, but it did ring a distant bell, like I said.
So there's that. Then there's the 2004 box set that we didn't really learn about until 2020. That didn't happen because supposedly it was, they brought Sammy back for that tour. So why are they going to put out a Dave box set? So that was canceled. And then that finally got leaked, although no one will confirm that's what the Ted Templeman demos things are online. That's what we believe that is. So I'm led to believe that this was part of an in the works documentary or DVD of some sort that just got killed. And that's the first part of it. And stop me when I'm talking too much or this is not interesting. But what I'm hearing is that the people who helped put this out are not, it's not Team Dave. Initially, I thought that this was Team Dave, because what we've learned about Dave from over the years is that he does really alternately generous things and really paranoid, devious kinds of things. And the good deeds that Dave does, usually they don't publicize. He doesn't want it out there that he did nice things for people. Like, Dave's not the one who put out that he gave the $10,000 to Michael Anthony after the loss of his grandson. Dave doesn't put out there about the charity work and the donations. We find out from other people.
Right. So, and it's very low key, and really, to say it's under the radar is an understatement.
And yes, the Icy Hot 66, the biopic that got canned, rumors of that as well, though Alex kind of bumped that up with his surge of press around his book. So I thought for a second that this was a Dave Goodwill project. That's what I initially thought. And then what I heard from somebody who knows what they're talking about is, no, this was not put up by management. This was not put up by Dave. Those people may have had this, but an individual person who may or may not have listened to the DLR cast before is who helped put it up on YouTube. So that's a little bit of the who, what, where, why, when, and supposedly more is to be expected. And this goes against, I've talked to people who have been in the Van Halen ranks or the Dave ranks, and they go, there's nothing in the can. Everything good has already been put out. And you watch this thing and you're like, no, this is better than what most bands put out for Record Store Day.
Yep.
And one more thing from the Icy Hot right here is about this footage. Unfortunately, because of the reasons I mentioned 2 minutes ago, not going to talk about it publicly. Well, the bottom line is we have a lot of conspiracy theories. Steve, you are more factual than I am. So your turn.
Well, I was just thinking, especially in light of these comments, thank you, Icy Hot, is that, I mean, how did this person get it, all this footage?
Right.
How long has he had it? What prompted,
or they,
he or she, excuse me, what prompted that person to put it up? Why now? Do you know what I mean? I'm always curious about the route these things take. It's not like somebody just like stumbled upon this and went on last Tuesday and went, oh, I'm going to clean this up and get it all up on YouTube. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And why did Lisa Roth? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, these are questions as well. And that was a joke. I'm not saying that Lisa Roth was the source of this, but was a Roth sister the Deep Throat source on Dave and Dave? We still can't say. Anyway, we're going. There's so many damn questions, and I think we could spend hours upon hours delving into that. But the other sense of it, we started this podcast because we were kind of going like, why aren't they opening the vaults? What's the holdup? Right. And the vaults kind of feel like they've been opened.
With a very creaking, hesitant door, so to speak. You know, I mean, little dribs and drabs here and there. You know, there's still always going to be those mysteries, and we could segue anytime to the specifically Dave, Dave solo stuff. But I mean, all the weirdness. It's thanks to Ramses the other day, with Slam Dunk being up on the Mojo Dojo channel, I was reminded yet again how infuriatingly ridiculous it is that the DLR band is not on the damn streaming services.
Yeah, he put out that comment. Then the David Lee Roth news desk has also put up a video or 2 or 3. And that person may or may not be named Dave. So that's the confusing part, that the David Lee Roth news that there's a thing I don't know if he ever wants this publicly put out. And by the way, thank you again, the Icy Hot. You are a legend. Thank you very much. There's a thing that the David Lee Roth news desk guy has out there, that he called into this radio show that David Lee Roth was on in the late 90s, and he asked him a trolling question to his face on the air, and it's amazing. I need to see if he wants that put out there. It's really good. But sidebar right there. I do apologize. And we have a hello from a familiar listener who has a few different names, but Odin, not Kevin, Odin, thank you very much for your listening and support. I'm just psyched about this vault stuff. I kind of want to savor it a little by little. What have you watched so far, Steve?
I watched the Donington stuff. Mm-hmm. I watched, and this is piecemeal back and forth trying to get some work done today. By the way, I'm like, oh, well, this is perfect for lunch, you know? So yeah. I watched the Hot for Teacher. There's two Hot for Teacher videos, 2 different videos, outtakes. And obviously we're doing this on the computer. I can pull it up and look right now, but Hot for Teacher, the Panama outtakes, I watched most of that. I mean, there's parts where I kind of fast forward back and forth, but I spent about a good, close to an hour jumping around, watching bits and pieces. Like I said, I did not get to the 78 stuff, of which there's about 5 or 6 videos on that channel right now. So there's a lot more to see. I mean, I'm sure all of us in the next couple of days are going to be spending a lot of hours looking at this stuff, watching this stuff, because it's really cool. I mean, it's downright fascinating, especially the video shoot stuff. I mean, I absolutely love it.
I'm psyched that it's not just from one era. It's not just from one tour. So there's a lot of stuff in Japan.
Yeah.
There's Uniondale, which you know is a Long Island native. That means Nassau Coliseum.
I can't believe I didn't watch that first, for God's sakes. If that was Edom and Smile tour, I would have watched that first because I was at that show.
We saw Madison Square Garden as well. And when I hear that, that tells me, okay, so somebody in New York, somebody in Japan. But What the Icy Hot said before, and I'll pull up the comment again, that there's a ton of footage. Dave kind of alludes to that in his autobiography about them filming all the time. And somebody who listens to the show who's been around some places told me that there was a lot of stuff with Alex that is backstage. So, and then I'm sorry, there was in Alex's book, when he was talking crap about Marshall Burl, I think he mentioned a lot of the Japanese tour being filmed in general. And we do see there's been fashion spreads and videos and all that of that original Japanese tour that I think Shinko Music just keeps recycling into Time Life-esque magazines.
Right.
So we see all that stuff from 78, and then we see all the stuff from 84. And then we all know about Oakland 81, but then we see nothing about Diver Down, really. Right? There's that one show from Maryland, I believe.
I was in Baltimore, yeah, right? Landover or something like that. Yeah.
Capitol Center. And that's because that arena filmed every show there, I guess. They did a multi-cam shoot for every show there, as opposed to Van Halen. But I'm wondering what's going to open up if this eventually leads to the full-on 81 Oakland, or if that's a myth. And our friend the Icy Hot believes more will be released, cryptically stated, of course.
Well, I had to assume. That's why I immediately clicked the subscribe button.
So we have this weird dichotomy, and that's a big word. If you're Gene Simmons, he'd go gymnasium. That is a big word. We have this weird dichotomy of the Van Halen vaults are opening up in a way, and then the David Lee Roth box set doesn't have one rarity or leftover on it.
And that's a really good segue I into that. If you want full disclosure, thanks so a couple weeks ago I was going to order it and I got sidetracked. I'm on Amazon and I stumbled across I ended up getting the House of Blues West Hollywood 94 2-disc CD set I found on Amazon, which was from Your Filthy Little Mouth tour. And and I just honestly, I spaced on the damn vinyl, which I am pissed. I spaced on the vinyl in particular, because that looks like it's sold out. I'm seeing it on eBay for $229. I've watched some, I can't find it on Amazon right now. So I'm assuming unless used copies start popping up there, but I'm just curious about a couple things. One, well, I saw your unboxing video. Fantastic. I saw there was another cool unboxing video I found through the David Lee Roth news desk.
Yeah.
The reviews I saw on the CD, there's only 6 reviews on Amazon on the CD, which means there's not a lot of people buying the CD one. And I guess the big confusion or the big controversy, I guess, is it remastered or not? And I mean, how much better is it than the originals?
So what I'm hearing, I don't have the ears for that. I have the ears for my musical background of notes, but I don't have the ears for audio quality, if that makes sense.
I'm the same way, yeah.
The people with the mastering ears are saying it's a range of going, some of the albums sound better than others, and some of them are saying it's terrible, and some of them are going, this was not remastered by a professional. It's not really good reviews on that end. There was nothing changed to the artwork. Oh, by the way, if we can go back for a second, the Icy Hot said Osaka 78 footage is 17 minutes long, but I can guarantee you it is part of the full 90-minute complete video. He's watched it. He or she or they. I don't want to offend anyone. And then Kevin, allegedly, this person's named Kevin, said he only has, he or she or they has only 30 or 40 more years left with regard to the opening of the vaults. And then looks like a special guest of us.
Let's give a big hello to Eric from the Booked on Rock podcast, who reminds me that I absolutely loved watching the Monsters of Rock stuff as well today. Those kicks were fantastic. Dave practicing the kicks. He's doing these amazing kicks. It's almost like nonchalant. It's like, hey, I'm warming up. I know exactly what you're talking about, Eric. It was great.
And then to sidetrack myself further, one thing I did see 15 seconds of is, I think it was the Madison Square Garden 78 show where Dave was actually sound checking with the band and actually warming up a little bit during You Really Got Me with his moves and all that. We are accustomed to thinking that Dave doesn't sound check, that Dave doesn't show up for rehearsal. But I guess in the early days, he had to play the game and follow suit with all that.
Yeah, back then, maybe there really was such a thing as the block.
There might have been. I have asked the people that would know if the block has happened yet for the M3 festival. I did not get a clear answer, which kind of tells me no.
All right, we'll get to the M3 festival stuff. I want to circle back, if you will, to your thoughts on you. I saw your unboxing video for the vinyl, if I recall. So I'm sure a lot of people have already seen that, but just, you know, kind of underwhelming, I guess. It's great that it's out, but as always, you're left wanting so much more. The packaging, the box set on the vinyl looks great. It looks very high quality. You know, of course, the fact that there's no outtakes or anything is pretty disappointing. And I mean, no extras or anything like that.
No liner notes.
But certainly unsurprising.
No. Well, do you remember the David Lee Roth story about him freaking out on David Wilde?
Yes.
Yeah.
For those who don't know,
he did liner notes to, was it Best of Both Worlds? He did liner notes for some Van Halen release and never really heard anything. You know, he got paid, and then supposedly David Lee Roth saw him at some award show and just freaked out at him. But, you know, Dave's going to Dave. Simple as that. And by the way, we got another tidbit from the Icy Hot. There are full pro shot videos from Women and Children First tour, Fair Warning tour, and 1984 tour that have never been seen. So, wow, this 24 hours or so of footage is not everything. That is, we've waited 40 plus years for all this, and that's not even everything. And a little more, the Fair Warning show is not Oakland. That was never videotaped completely. The Fair Warning show and video is from somewhere else in the US. It's a full pro shot show. Wow. I used to go to Japan a lot, and there was this bootleg store that you could just walk in. It didn't operate in a hidden way. It was called Airs, AIRS, and you could just go in and buy bootleg DVDs like you were buying rice or your soft drink or potato chips. You could just, I'll take the Roth 88 show and the White Snake. So I always thought that the bootlegs primarily came out of Japan, and that would make sense given the fact that we saw Osaka 78 and I think Nagoya 78 as well. So I'm saying a prayer to the Japanese gods that we get the Van Halen Japanese shows in general, because bands always try their hardest in Japan.
Yes, it's always the extra mile for the extra yen, so to speak. Pardon the pun.
For sure. But I was still interrupting you about the box set. A little disappointing. It is what it is.
Yeah. Like I said, disappointing, certainly unsurprising.
So can we talk a little M3?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I was a couple days ago on the Halenville podcast. Great guys, Fruitcake Tony and Brandon and Edvis and all that. Okay, and they're going to the M3 festival, and I'm not afraid of doxing myself a little bit. So I folded up a credit card statement. I don't know. Oh no, it's going to show. And no, we got it. Okay, do we got
1-800-U-porn? What?
No, that's your. Okay, it's above the
Starbucks.
Green. Yeah, there is a Starbucks. Can you see third from the bottom right there? TM.
Yeah.
David Lee Roth. That's the M3 festival. It doesn't say Ticketmaster M3 festival. It says TM David Lee Roth. Is Dave a partner on this festival? Is Dave doing a door deal? Do you think that's weird? Because I do.
That is really weird. I mean, God, we can speculate. Maybe Dave's got Dave's got a promoter business on the side going on or something. Yes. That's so bizarre.
I mean, well, let's show for a second. The Dutchman's Wood Shack. Hi, everyone. Hey, thank you for joining us. We love the Dutch. I mean, without the Dutch, there's no Van Halen. That's the fact. And also, this individual would maybe named Kevin, code name, government name, has heard shows from the Fair Warning tour that Dave sang better. Okay, good to know. But this credit card statement where I've doxed myself right there, the fact that M3 comes up as David Lee Roth Ticketmaster, and now all the signage for M3 is a photo of Dave, and the title of the event is David Lee Roth.
What is going on? And has anybody told Steve and Piercy this?
Well, Piercy and DeMartini, when they announced M3, that was the first time that they'd spoken in years, according to that Eddie Trunk thing.
Right.
And they've since announced the show at Mohegan Sun and other shows in general. Dave has not announced other shows. So I'm wondering if he built this as this is my one gig, or there's some exclusive nature. I don't think I'm bananas for reading into this, the fact that it says Ticketmaster, David Lee Roth on the credit card statement. Because when they first announced the show, Dave wasn't on the billing. Wasn't he a later addition when they first said, well, let's go back. They didn't say the M3 Festival presents David Lee Roth. They just said M3 Music Festival.
Right. And if you remember our last episode, we were looking at all this, we were kind of perplexed and bemused by the fact that everybody had a picture up there except for Dave. I mean, it was very slapdash, I guess, if you will. And and it's funny because now if you go to, when you go to the lineup and you click on that cool picture from the Vegas poster, in fact, I even mentioned, I'm like, why don't they use one of those cool pictures from the Vegas poster? That's what they use. You click to that, it goes straight to davidleeroth.com, which on the front page there is the Panama ad, which that aired during the Super Bowl. It just says Panama ad for what I think was Dodge trucks. I love that commercial, by the way. I thought that was fantastic use of the song Panama. Hilarious video, hilarious commercial. But nearly 2 weeks later or whatever, 2 weeks later, Dave puts that video up on
2 weeks later. And that is the first.
And that's what you go to when you click on view artists at the M3 website.
So what comes to mind with that is it's great he shared it. But that's the first time that Van Halen or any of its members have shared a commercial that they were a part of in years. So when there was the McDonald's UK commercial with Jump a couple of years ago, the Applebee's commercial, Rocket League, all that kind of stuff, they didn't share it. And then now this one Super Bowl ad, they do. It's just there's no consistency to any of that. So let's say that Dave is a partner on this festival, or it's a door deal or something like that. Steve, how many interviews has Dave currently done to date in support of the box set and M3?
That would be a big fat round 0.
Oh, 0. Okay. So is this like another Ink the Original where he felt like this is a great idea, this is going to change the world, and then spent a fortune, and then 2 weeks later went, nah, I'm bored?
Well, it's interesting. If you go all the way down to the bottom of the website, it says all inquiries, info@newbreedmm.com. I have never heard of them. I don't. Is that a DBA for Dave's new concert?
No, I can verify.
I know
concert
it's
promoter, and they also manage a couple of people.
Right. I know.
But I mean, Dave still does have his trademarks through Russ World LLC, and I think like Russ the Dog LLC.
I was wondering maybe that was some long lost LLC that you may have found somewhere.
Yeah, so I'm just very, very, very confused because of how much they've botched or mishandled this M3 thing. Because M3 is known as a throwback festival, so the people who don't listen to these kinds of bands that we pigeonhole would go, okay, yeah, old people. And then us people go, this is the coolest festival I've ever seen. And the people who go to a festival like this are people with disposable income who will generally buy VIP packages. This is their Woodstock of sorts. So he books his exclusive show, his return, and then doesn't promote it at all. I've been able to say on the show who I believe is in his band. I believe.
Well, he did promote it, quote air quotes, by those couple, flashback to FM DJ Instagram videos. Yo, babies. Whatever that, all that stuff.
The bass in your face and the boom in the room and the like the boat with the
keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars.
Yeah, he did that stuff, but he never said in those videos, here's who's in my band. Here's what songs we're going to be doing. So when I was on the Halenville podcast a couple days ago, they were all excited. They're not all jaded like I am. And they're going, we think Steve Vai's going to be there. And I'm going, not a chance.
No.
Not a chance.
No.
Sorry, guys. Hate to, take the air out of the tires here, but zero chance that Dave's going to do anything special for the show when this should be the one show he's doing something special for.
Right. And we got a comment here, a take from Icy Hot. He said, my take on M3, and I may be wrong, but I'm thinking that Dave is going to do this as a one-off show and see how the reception is. If he gets a good reception, then we'll add more dates, to which we may have talked about that before, thought about. My thing with there is that best time for him to tour is clearly the summertime. This thing is happening in May. You're really, you got to start booking stuff now, man. If you want to get on a couple, maybe there's a little bit more leeway for casino shows where, God, I hope Dave doesn't play, quite frankly. But, if there's any other festivals out there, I mean, think of when M3 was booked and announced. You know what I mean? I understand the logic to that. I just question the timing, how that works out. If you're gonna want to do anything in the summertime. Yeah. I mean, after all, Dave always says Van Halen was the soundtrack of every summer from,
Ed and I spent 11 summers together. He would equate everything to a summer. And so, and by the way, Mr. Odin, Mr. Kevin, did you buy a single day ticket? Unfortunately, you can only buy the 3-day at this point in time. So, but then again, allegedly you're a New Yorker. And when you see how much the ticket prices are as a New Yorker, you're going to go, why is this so cheap? Just look. You're going to be very.
Let's just put it this way: the price will be what the market will bear. Your fundamental tenet of pricing and capitalism, right? And that's where the market is for these acts.
Sure. So with that whole thing, what I'd heard from my sources, and this is one of those things where I swear to you, I'm telling you what I hear when I'm allowed to say this kind of stuff, but I can't always reveal the sources because I don't want them 20 years ago to lose their jobs or current day lose their jobs or be susceptible to things. And what I'd heard was exactly what Icy Hot said, that taking the temperature, interested in doing more shows, but seeing how this one goes. But unfortunately, the way that the ticket sales look right now, it's horrendous.
And by the way,
bad.
Yeah, tickets went on sale almost a month ago. They went on sale at the end of January.
Yeah, I bought them that weekend because I thought it was going to sell out immediately. And I bought them with my friend, 2 friends, and we're all coordinating a meetup. And now I know people from this podcast are going, and it's going to be fun and all that. But after I bought them, I realized there was no urgency to this. Dave was playing 1,200 cap room in Vegas before COVID.
Right. Overall, and we talked about this last episode, the overall lineup on this, all the bands I really want to see, you could fit into one night.
I'll give you that. And I think that you have the same, let's say the same 5,000 people that want to see all these bands.
I'll tell you what.
To just finish my thought, and then it's the Steve time. Sorry.
No, sorry.
So Accept and Warrant are not the same fan base, of course, but Warrant and Rat are arguably the same fan base. Accept and Sebastian Bach, I would argue, similar fan base. Vixen is probably the same fan base as Lita Ford. Not to sound too sexist right there. It's the same people for all that. They should have thought a little bigger, where they went outside the box and go like Cheap Trick. Okay, Cheap Trick would bring 1,000 to 2,000 people who are not catering to this, or Rick Springfield would bring people who probably weren't coming to this. But back to you, Steve.
I mean, just overall, I look at this bill. Okay, first off, there's a couple bands on here where you absolutely cannot have the original lineups. I get that. So I totally understand that. So that diminishes my interest in 2 of those bands. For me, I mean, obviously, Dave, I'm super curious about Stephen Pearson and Warren DeMartini because I am a huge Rat fan.
Oh, yeah.
So it's those guys. Winger, I've never seen Winger before, and
They're
their
great.
last album was incredible. And I know
Yeah.
they are still getting it done live. I watched a lot of videos. I would love to be excited about Ace. I've seen some recent videos.
No.
I have a really tough time, and I'm a big, big, big Kiss fan and love Ace, man. But it's, you know, but the rest of these, I appreciate Sebastian's talent and Skid Row, but you know, I don't know what he's been doing solo. I've never been a huge fan of those bands. And the rest of them, Steven Adler, really, no knock on him, but you know, the Steven Adler experience, Steven Adler Guns N' Roses experience, I don't know what it is. And these other bands on here, again, I don't mean to diss anybody, but just 99% of the people, there's a bottom third of this year where people go, I don't know who these guys are.
There's that too. And I think that it's an excellent festival of support acts, minus Dave.
There you go.
And you know, let's say they magically put on this festival, they went, and we're going to add Firehouse, who I love.
Sure.
And we're going to add LA Guns, who I love. And we're going to add Enough's Enough, who I love.
Yes.
Congratulations. You've sold another 150 tickets combined.
Which is sad to say, because right there, you named some folks who have been on previous M3s I would love to see. Now, I add Y&T to that bill because I love Y&T. Enough's Enough you mentioned. Yeah. I mean, yeah, whatever. I'm trying to think. There was somebody else who popped into my head, and now I just lost it. But you're right, as far as kind of some of those other bands on there who may or may not be touring, but certainly would come out for airfare and a backline already set up there.
Yeah. So I unfortunately am in that same continued chasm, for lack of a better word, without talking about Chasm Sultan. And that's
nice Utopia pull there. All right.
Thank you very much. Where you go, like, Dave is unfortunately a stagnant thing because none of the problems are being fixed. Van Halen's similar deal. We can't credit Van Halen for this leak of amazing footage. Van Halen apparently had nothing to do with that. So we have these amazing artists who are just killing their own legacies, not doing anything to promote this M3 festival, nothing to promote Dave's box set, no clue about official Van Halen merchandise or releases. And that's the frustrating thing about all this. But meanwhile, you know, there's been other great YouTube content about Van Halen and Dave in recent weeks, and Van Halen doesn't share it.
No, I want to talk about some other content, some videos that have definitely totally floated my boat of late and absolutely love. But I want to get back to something you mentioned for a second there, and that is the band that Dave will be on stage with at M3. And what you know and what you're hearing and who's in it, I think we could take a good guess, but obviously nothing's been announced. I wonder does Dave even announce these guys on stage anymore?
Oh, a funny thing about that. And Icy Hot, you're right. Icy Hot, you're right. And Terry, thank you for listening again. You're right. So the first or the second show in Vegas of January 2020, there is an amazing part of the show, which is on YouTube, where he announces the band. I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast, but he doesn't know the names of the people in the band.
God damn it. I'm out. Like, I can't take it. I can't.
Was that a Joe Piscopo thing, or is that a Phil Hartman Saturday Night Live thing with where he's Sinatra, like naming the people? And he gets this is the story that I heard, and I think Frankie Lindia told me this. He leaned into Frankie during the show and goes, "What's your name?" And Frankie said, like, Frankie Lindia. And it's like, Frankie Martinelli. Like, he got that name wrong. And then there's a part of the show. This was at the one I was at. So I think it was the first show in Vegas. And he said to the drummer, like, tell him your name. And he's like, Mike Musselman. And Dave starts going, Musselman? That's your real name? Musselman. What a last name. Musselman.
God damn it. Here's what the most cringeworthy thing is. I don't want my heroes to become fucking parodies.
And he could, so Kevin could go on if Dave needed, just, you know, I mean, I'm sure you're a fair warning guy. You know the whole catalog through and through, but I think it's very funny that Jake Fawn also confirmed this to me. He never met Dave before he played live with him, meaning when you hit the first note and everyone's like doing and then Dave walks on, Dave hadn't met Jake Fawn before that. So in terms of hyping up the people in the band, it's kind of hard to do when you don't really know
this
who's in the band.
This is so close to all right, fuck. Even Elvis at the end knew who was in his band. It was the same 25 guys all the time for years, for the most part. He knew who those guys were. But now I'm thinking to like, God, who was it? Is it maybe Tom Jones? Some of these other guys where they're playing with the local best players they can get. They don't even know the band, for God's sakes. That's what this has come down to. This bums me out.
So,
and some of these guys he has been playing off. These are the same guys that did all the Van Halen re-records.
I believe so. So the thing is, I can tell you who I think is going to be in the band, but there's always a chance they don't make it to Maryland. And I can tell you why I think that. But I believe it's Francis Valentino on drums, who we've had on the show, who plays with Matthew Curry. He plays with a lot of people. He's really good. Ryan Wheeler on bass.
I thought Ryan couldn't do it.
Ryan can do it.
Okay.
Ryan, I think, might be the music director or the MD. I think
he was previously.
He was previously. I believe he does the Eddie Van Halen backing vocals, and Al Estrada, the guitar player, does the Michael Anthony vocals. I think it's flipped with all that. I don't think that there's a keyboard player. I don't think that there's a second guitar player. I think there might be some tracks going on. I think it's a lot of the same crew from the Vegas and Kiss era if they're available. Mm-hmm. Now, when I say, will it be the same people and it could change? See, that's the stuff I heard. But we know that during the Kiss dates, they fired Musselman a couple of shows in and brought in Francis. And we know that the second guitarist in the January 2020 Vegas shows was Frankie Lindia, and he couldn't do the other stuff, so they brought in Jake Fawn. So, I mean, it changed in the middle of the tour. You look at A Little Ain't Enough, some of the shows had a second guitarist, some of the shows didn't.
Right.
You look at the 94 shows.
The shows that didn't. The shows that didn't on the Little Ain't Enough tour, where when I saw that, it was Extreme, Dave, and Cinderella, and it was a 3-act bill because Dave couldn't fill arenas anymore.
Yeah.
And you're not going to pay the expense for another guitar player for a tour. Now, there's overseas footage from that tour where he was doing better business. I think it was earlier in the album cycle where there is a rhythm guitar player. So, I mean,
Desi Rex, who from DeMals, and there's an article about him moving to Utah and what he's been up to in recent years. If you want to dig around for Desi Rex, who Dave was managing. People don't realize there's this phase in the late 80s, early 90s where Dave was managing DeMals and he was managing Jeff Young, who was in Megadeth. Just this bonkers stuff that one day I want the floodgates to open up on. But that 94 tour, when we had on Rocket Rashad, he was talking about how he was in and out of the band a few times because Terry Kilgore would have a problem with Dave or there'd be a money issue. And be like, Rocket, you're back. Right. So his lineup, even on guitar, has been a revolving door. If you look at that Finland gig that I love from, I think, 99, Bart, why am I screwing up the name? Bart. We lost him a couple of years ago. The guitar player, Bart Walsh.
There you go. Yes.
He's on guitar.
It's coming to me.
And then the album that came out the year before, DLR Band, didn't have Bart. It had John Five on some songs, Mike Hartman on some songs, and Terry Kilgore on songs. Songs. But when we talk about good YouTube content, we were talking off mic about that Darren video, not this Darren.
Darren. Yes, Darren Householder played with Love Hate for a little later incarnation of Love Hate, who I loved. Oh my goodness, Blackout in the Red Room. I can never tire of that record. Quick segue to that. If anybody who hasn't had a chance to take it's 3 minutes of like amazing, like little Dave Insider stuff, which I absolutely loved. What was it? It was what was the name? Masters of Shred. If you go to the Masters of Shred channel on YouTube, and just a little tidbit there of how he went to Dave's house twice, wrote a bunch of songs, played with him for a bit, a minute, but it was him, Ray Luzier, and Billy Sheehan in this interview on Masters of Shred, and they were just talking about Dave's just musical knowledge, they were still kind of talking a little bit in awe, just how deep this stuff was. And Darren mentioned in particular, Dave was talking about the Steve Miller Band. And what I really cracked up, I had no idea how much Dave loved Matthew Wilder's "Don't Go Breaking My Stride" during 1986. It's like 3 minutes, but it was gold. It was awesome. I mean, that was really cool.
And we found out about that through the David Lee Roth news desk.
Yes, props to that news desk. Yeah.
And then we also found out that Darren, not this Darren, that Darren, basically didn't get the gig because he had a kid.
Right. Yeah. The short anecdote to that is he was at Dave's house. He's got the car there. Dave walks him out and he sees there's a baby seat in the back seat of the car. And Dave goes, "How's the family?" Which, I mean, has to be a bit of a pointed question, because we've never heard Dave asking that question of any other musician, right? At least publicly, that we've heard in any interviews. It's not like we've heard numerous guitar players, different people go, "Yeah, every time Dave sees me, he says, 'How's the family?'" But that was kind of telling, because I think, as he put it, that was Dave kind of maybe, getting a temperature check there, feel like, I don't think this guy, a baby seat in the back, this guy, he's can't tour. And he can't be at my beck and call.
Exactly. Terry, yes, that was a fun video. There's a lot of people in Dave's orbit, no kids, single, forever kind of single. And I'm not going to shame people or like give out people's personal information, but the majority of people in Dave's orbit were single or uncommitted for the most part, or just transient people in a good way towards what you would need to somebody you want at your beck and call.
You had to be.
Yeah. So there might be a strategy to that whole thing. That's probably, in my opinion, an outdated strategy that does not work for 2000 forward, because of how many bands you now see that are basically weekend warriors, and they figured out that kind of thing. Like Blue Oyster Cult is not going to go on a 6-week tour. Blue Oyster Cult is going to fly out on the Thursday night or the Friday.
Guess what? That's the entire M3 lineup.
Yeah.
None of these guys are living on buses. These are all, 3 days out, 12 days back home, a few more kind of dartboard sort of things, fly-ins where they don't have to go out with a lot of equipment and trucks and stuff.
Yeah. Joey Allen, the guitar player in Warren, I think people know this, that he's the artist rep for Pearl Drums. So obviously he has a day job. And he does Warrant for fun on weekends. I don't think that's an uncommon thing. Ace Frehley doesn't have a day job, but it's possible his crew does. And his people in his band have other gigs and other things that they do. So people make things work when they have children and jobs and side hustles and all that. And Icy Hot, we got another comment. Let's just say Dave headlines with those musicians. Nobody cares about those guys and nobody knows those guys. Okay. Normally, I would say you're totally right. Normally, I would. Dave has had a good history of picking interesting people in his band. Like, think of how much we're still talking about Steve Vai and Billy Sheehan and Bissonette. And I understand this current band is not that, but I'm making a prediction. 3 years from now, you're going to know who Ryan Wheeler is, and nobody's going to know it because of Dave's stuff. He's a big writer, producer, sideman for other people.
Hey, I'm still talking about Ray Luzier's amazing drumming.
Yeah, he's a member of Korn. He's not a hired gun for Korn. He's a member of Korn who are still doing arenas for the most part everywhere.
Quick trivia. Can you name the band that Ray was in that featured a guy from Filter and two people from Stone Temple Pilots?
Army of Anyone.
Bingo, you won the grand prize, which I don't know what that is.
I'm up on my Stone Temple Pilots related trivia because I did an interview recently with Dave from the band Talk Show, who's a great guy.
Yeah, I'm one of 25 people that love that record.
Well, he's got another band, which I should post some links to. A guy named Mark Dunn plays guitar, and I interviewed him and Dave, and I go, "So how'd you two meet?" And Mark was a fan of Talk Show and just reached out, and they wound up collaborating that way. So Steve, you could have a band with Dave too.
I've said before, I pay attention to anything any of the DeLeo brothers, and I should say the drummer does too, but particularly
Eric
solo.
Kretz,
Eric Kretz, yes. Robert's solo album is amazing. I mean, I've any side projects, anything they do, I want to know about it.
Icy Hot, you're not wrong. There's a lot of the fan base that just wants the classic stuff. Totally get it. Then there's the obsessives like me who learn all the names in the parentheses. But Icy Hot, you're the MVP. I think I should retitle this episode after you.
And guys like me that get pissed that he doesn't play a little ain't enough. I mean, so.
Yeah, so this what we were just talking about with the Darren from Love, Hate, and all that was a cool video that came out. And I agree again about the social media stuff. But
we've been saying that for years. That's most of the content on this whole podcast.
But a thing I did like was the YouTube video by Tank the Roadie. It was a long listen. Did you get through most of it or just
most of it? And I think unless I missed it, I was fast forwarding parts. I had to get some stuff done and running around stuff. But there was just some tidbits in the back third of it about Dave. For the most, right?
There was some different things. Let me start it and then I'll tag you back in.
Yeah, sure.
So Tank the Roadie was a musician who basically worked his way up to doing merch on the road for different bands and tech work to ultimately being a tour manager and really leading the work with merch, not just selling the shirts, but overseeing it or the tour management. And he works with a lot of big bands. And the first big band he ever got was Van Halen. They put him out on the 2012 leg of A Different Kind of Truth. And he at the time was still drinking and partying a lot and screwed up on his first night or two of the tour. But ultimately, it's a good redemption story. So the story's about how he learned to grow up and do his job well on that tour, but that led to some different tidbits about Dave and Van Halen. Do you remember any of them offhand?
Well, a couple things. One, and this is the 2012 tour, A Different Kind of Truth, and one of them was that the buses never, Dave had his own bus.
Yeah.
Eddie and Wolfgang had their own bus. The buses were never parked next to each other. They never saw each other until they got on stage. He threw some rumors out there that he heard before he got on the tour that Dave had management fire like 12 people from the tour.
Yes.
That it was full on diva, that there was a bus driver that survived the whole tour that got a car as a bonus. But what stood out to me though was the fact, and he was so figuring I'll get fired if I have any, he was warned not to have any interactions with Dave, and the interactions he had with Dave were positive and great. I mean, now he thinks it was because he was making them money selling merch, but still the reputation. I mean, that's the part that, unless I missed some other stuff in there, that's that jumped out at me.
You skipped two things that I thought were really, really awesome. The first one was just a trivial thing that I guess the crew was really, 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 really close with one another and hung out together on off days.
Yeah. They talked a lot about that. That's true. I was thinking more Van Halen related.
They had a softball event and Alex and Wolfgang showed up to it and he said, okay, that's the only time I saw them really outside of the arena. You didn't really see the band around, but how did my favorite part, Lockdown? Did you skip over Lockdown?
I think I must have missed that. I'm sorry. I kept running in and out of the room and doing stuff. Damn it. Now I'm gonna have to go back. Where was that?
I think it was in Tulsa where that happened, where apparently a certain amount of time before Van Halen is to hit the stage, no one is allowed to basically leave, like enter or exit the venue, the trucks, anything with air, because Dave freaks out about air conditioning. Dave freaks out about airflow. Dave freaks out about anything, any kind of changes. And so one of
we know he hates air conditioning. We know he hates air conditioning. We've seen those outtakes and stuff.
But he has his manager walk around with a lighter to see whether or not the air blows. And then he was talking about that. And this merch guy, no one had briefed him when he joined mid-tour. So everyone had already built the rapport and like knew how to work with Van Halen. And they didn't tell him some of the key things, such as there's a lockdown. So the first night of the tour, he was in the truck and got locked in the truck because no one was allowed to come out to get him because it's on extreme. And they're like, oh, we forgot. And the story is ultimately about how he built up the trust and through the tour, and then that led to bigger things. But another takeaway is apparently the guy who invented the in-ear monitor is a crew guy for Van Halen.
Yeah, and he was talking about a bunch of different guys went off and do from that crew went off into some pretty successful forays in and out of the music business. So
yeah, so
it's a good thing to have on your resume, I guess.
That was a good one. And then yesterday, the Billy Corgan, who's come out of nowhere with this like A-list music podcast. He had
man, it just keeps getting better. It's only been 4 episodes. It was Gene Simmons, maybe one of the best, most in-depth interviews I've ever heard with Gene.
Yeah.
I didn't get around to listen to Sharon Osbourne. And I probably won't. The Tom Morello interview was fantastic because they both came up in the Chicago area, didn't know each other, came up around the same time. It's just fascinating how their paths almost intertwined. But of course, in the 90s, they certainly did. And then this Wolfgang interview, which was pretty fascinating, man. I'm telling you, I hit subscribe on Corgan's channel because the guy's a damn good interviewer, man. I'm really enjoying this stuff. It's exactly, when you see those interviews where you're not left wanting, thinking questions you wish would have been asked because the conversation is so damn engrossing.
Yeah.
That's my props to Billy for that. And the Wolfgang interview does not disappoint.
I thought it was great. And I only watched the first 15, 20 minutes. So I look forward to digging in. And then that tied in with another thing that I wrote down. Because we're talking about Wolfgang. Wolfgang and Sammy Hagar are both on, and you said Sharon Osbourne. They're both on the Ozzy Black Sabbath final show, but Dave isn't. I find it very interesting that Wolfgang and Sammy are both on that because wasn't there a supposed rift that people were trying to say like, oh, Wolfgang won't do this because Sammy's there. Wolfgang won't call Sammy by his name. He called him the singer.
Yeah. Well, are they performing together on a song? Or are they both going to be there? I doubt it. Yeah. No. So I just think they might not even know that they're both on the same bill for goodness sakes yet, So, and who knows what this thing is going to take. I mean, I saw something where Ozzy's only going to do a couple songs. I mean, this could be either the greatest thing in the world or the saddest thing in the world by the end of it. I don't know. So, I mean, the lineup looks fascinating. Certainly had no expectation. Listen, Samuel go to an envelope opening. We get that. But I had no expectation as that Dave would be doing that at all. I mean, did Van Halen ever do Black Sabbath covers back in the day?
Oh yeah.
They did a few, didn't they? Right. But we know Tom, makes sense for Wolfgang. Tony and Eddie were extremely close.
They were almost
Halen and Black Sabbath toured together, but they were both incredibly close friends.
They were almost named together. Rat Salad, which is a song on the Paranoid album.
Right. Yes.
That Alex interview, he talked about how they were supposed to do an Van Halen album or whatever with Ozzy singing for Van Halen, which you and I have poked holes in 5-6 episodes.
Yeah, ago. That's beer memory or something there. I don't know.
Well, there's also the question of, do they want to make it more of a Randy Rhoads thing? Because they've built up this whole, Eddie and Randy were guitar rivals. People have built up that thing. But you ask people like Dave White from Blabbermouth who can poke holes in that too and say, that's not really what happened. But I'm curious to see what happens with that event. And I continue to think that Black Sabbath is one of the best managed legacies of any rock band. And Van Halen, the legacy.
And which is amazing because for a good, 10 plus years or so, that legacy, man, the 80s. And I love a lot of that music. I love a lot of that stuff where, you can't remember who was in the band, Seven Star and things like that.
Cozy Powell.
I love the Born Again album with Ian Gillan. I mean, it was all when they were at their lowest point. Nobody remembers that stuff. I mean, you remember it for the good stuff, but I mean, there was a period where post Ozzy, that band was real. Post Dio, that band was really on the ropes, and they have done a remarkable job because Tony has been so involved in, the remasters and all these things. I mean, he's delivering the legacy is being delivered for the fans in a great way. Nobody should be complaining about that. This concert, what really piqued my interest about the concert is, correct me if I'm wrong, but Bill Ward's going to be playing.
I believe so, but I wouldn't expect him to play more than a few songs.
No, I don't expect that either. But I mean, when Black Sabbath did the reunion album and the tour didn't happen, I mean, with Bill, I'm saying the tour didn't happen. Bill wasn't a part of the tour. That was really disappointing to me because I was like, oh man, come on. I mean, that couldn't happen for that last tour and last album. That bummed me out.
Yeah,
because he's a crucial part of that sound, man.
Was there a jazz drummer? I mean, you could say hard rock didn't exist before Black Sabbath. You can argue that or say they're one of the first 5 if you want to talk about Blue Cheer or Mountain or whatever. But was there a jazz drummer? Oh, okay. Ginger Baker. Sure.
Yeah.
But Bill Ward, still, nobody played like that.
No.
And Daryl, thank you for joining. You got a shout out in the first minute or 2 of the show. Thank you. I didn't know that Van Halen covered Tomorrow's Dream. That's now we're going to see the Icy Hot 66 go. And that is going to be on one of the next things released on YouTube.
I'll tell you, with the exception of like ZZ Top and a couple other things, I completely forgot that they did some Black Sabbath stuff, because when I think about those cover tune days, I think about the pop stuff they did supposedly. Yeah. I mean,
Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Yeah. I mean, stuff that I would like kill to hear. Yeah. I mean, and doing ZZ Top stuff, some of the stuff that we have heard. And is there a bootleg, or is there stuff on YouTube or somewhere where there might be a Black Sabbath song out there? I can't remember.
I believe so. A lot of the prom gigs and the early Pasadena stuff is up in really crude audio that hasn't been touched up.
Yeah.
Understandably.
Yeah.
There is Club Days stuff, but they learned hundreds of songs. I'm sure.
Yeah. Because they were doing the block, man. That was the absolute real block. They put in their 10,000 hours. No bullshit. That seriously, I mean, we've talked about this before, just how hard that band worked. I mean,
yes.
The drive that I think that was primarily driven by Dave that got them out of the club and backyard scene, I mean, is just unparalleled. I mean, just amazing.
So taking things in a different direction for a second. Now, Terry T-Bone, great podcaster, has said when he talks about seeing Glenn Hughes towards the end of his Black Sabbath run and all that. Okay, David Lee Roth, of course, is thought of as one of the greatest ever, and he's untouchable till arguably 88, 89, you could say. Yes, he had great years after that. Now, Glenn Hughes had an amazing early 70s. Then he unfortunately had some problems that he ultimately fixed.
Deep Purple. He snorted most of Bolivia throughout the late 70s and early 80s. But I'm telling you, man, I will talk about Glenn Hughes all day long. He's got so much great solo music out there. And then there's this stuff where sorry, go ahead. I'm going to go off on a major tangent.
So to finish that thought, I'm going to say Glenn Hughes, the last 20 years, has had one of the best reinventions in rock and roll ever. So it's kind of like when Dave started to wane, Glenn Hughes maintained his voice despite all of that abuse, became embraced by younger musicians, became this sought after guest musician. So the way that Chad Smith brought him back, and he'd pop up in the stuff with Joe Lynn Turner for Japan and Russia and the Dead Daisies, and then he'd come out for
Black Country Communion. 5 albums. If he just only did that the last 20 years, you go, hey, that's pretty damn good for a guy who's 75. But no, go find California Breed, which is the first time anybody will have ever heard about Andrew Watt. That also had Jason Bonham, who was, of course, in Black Country, when Black Country Communion was kind of in a little hiatus there for a minute. His solo stuff is just Chad from the Chili Peppers is on a ton of that solo stuff because Chad absolutely idolizes and adores him. That's a great, yes. And Daryl, you're correct. Hughes' voice almost better now than mid 70s. It's totally freaky. The guy he's untouchable for so many. I mean, I'd get off that soapbox.
Yeah. So where I'm going with that is, you could take the path there that Dave took and just go, I'm a superstar. And you're holding on to that for way too long. Or you could be like Glenn Hughes and get humbled and work your way back up and do a variety of projects in an interesting way and still be at the top of your game.
And that is an amazing segue to what I hope will be the next episode that you don't even know about. And that is that I've been thinking of, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and I won't give it all away about what spurred me to think about this, because then this would take it into a whole totally different direction. We bond for an hour, but I have had this whole Dave's alternate universe sort of idea, theory, imaginary second half of the career. I've got charts, I've got graphs, I've thought about this, I've got bullet points, I've got outlines, I got all this stuff. I'm telling you, man, we will talk about this. It's a big tease for what should be a next episode. But when I tell you it all about it, when we have one of our legendary hour-long production meetings between episodes, that folks don't happen at all. I'm just bullshit. But when we chat about this over text, you'll go, that makes fucking perfect sense. We have to talk about this. PowerPoint. Yes. Thank you very much.
Well, so my question,
I'm telling you, man, you didn't even know it. You teed me up for like this whole idea of what, and I talk about this all the time, what could have, should have happened the last 20 years with Dave. And for so many reasons that we talk about, didn't happen, won't happen, never will happen. But this was so crystal clear to me when I saw this. I'm like, God damn it. An A&R man should have been thinking about this. Indeed, they probably were, but he couldn't get through to Dave.
Well,
and
speaking
that's
of A&R,
that's the big tease for the next episode.
I'm coming back to that in a second. Now, speaking of A&R, Kevin/Odin earlier made a good point that I forgot to bring up, which is that Mammoth did kind of sound like Army of Anyone. And I mean that in a good way.
That's, Billy talks about Wolfgang's voice in particular. I won't give the whole interview away, but he really kind of makes sense about what he likes about Wolfgang's voice. And I can kind of hear that actually compared to Richard Patrick, at least on Army of Anyone. That's a great comparison, man.
I like that. So where I was going with that last 20 years or the fork on the road career thing. So I have this email thread that has not ended in 8 years or so. It's been a reply to all for about 8 years with a couple of people who are similarly obsessed with music. And one of our hot topics is often Carmine Appice, however you want to say it, as a
right.
New York.
Nobody really knows.
son of Italy. And they sent me a photo. I didn't know that Carmine had a grunge era band called Mother's Army. Did you ever see this band?
No, man. And this was obviously post King Cobra and pre, what was it? Well, he did a couple things where, was it Japan only releases where it was like,
yes,
you know what I'm talking about, with a slew of guitar players, rock. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like Carmine's
Guitar Zeus.
That was it. I was going to say Carmine's gigantic Italian rock experience, but instead it was Carmine's giant Greek god experience. There you go.
Yeah. So he went grunge and Dokken went grunge a little bit and Accept went grunge. Some of those bands did go grunge to different results. Warrant went grunge. People like that record.
Or at least went darker. I like the last Columbia record they did. Was it Dog Eat Dog? Warrant's Dog Eat Dog record. That was the album after Cherry Pie. That's a damn good record. That's when I got into, that's when they started getting, was like 95, 96, I think, around there when, grunge wiped out all those bands.
For better and for worse, and Carmine can do no wrong. I think we're going to have to launch the Appicast in the near future to track all things Carmine, Appice, PC, however you want to say his last name. We do 6 episodes alone on how you say the last name, getting different linguists on the line to
easily.
But wait, we got a Terry. Yes, Jeff Watson.
Jeff Watson, a Night Ranger. Don't even get me started on Night Ranger. I could do a Night Ranger podcast, for God's sakes.
Was Jeff Watson in Mother's Army? Is that what I'm hearing?
Or was he on the Guitar Zeus?
Oh, I think he was in Guitar Zeus, and I believe there was a Guitar Zeus album last year. I was supposed to interview Nugent and Carmine, and they canceled.
That's right. Nugent was on that album. That's right.
Yeah.
Carmine, of course, is what, 96 now, I believe. I mean, good Lord, the guy Vanilla Fudge, Beck Bogert in a piece. The guy wrote "Do You Think I'm Sexy?" for God's sakes. I mean,
he is in flannel under a leather jacket in the photo I'm looking at here.
I'm going to go down a damn rabbit hole of Mother's Army. Oh my God.
I didn't know Jeff Watson was in. Okay, that does look like Jeff Watson in that photo, but I think that Dave, and I was talking about this on the Halenville podcast, because they're focused on different Van Halen kinds of things that we are. I still think it was one of the biggest mistakes of Dave's career not to do that John Mulaney show. Now, people aren't still talking about it, but that could have been an introduction to the next generation or two for Dave in a good way, and in a redeeming, like timeless, this person is LA cool kind of way.
Yeah, provided he comes off slightly normal and not looking like, someone jabbed a hypodermic needle into the side of his neck. I mean,
yeah. So
it's interesting to look at the Dave demeanor and look of like the last 10 or 15 years compared to, like, here's a good one. Okay. On the We Don't Fuck Around Facebook page, right?
Scott Yeager. Yeah.
So much stuff on there. There was a bunch of articles on there that someone screenshot from Around Your Filthy Little Mouth. And you can just see, Dave had kind of more of a serious vibe, a serious look. As you said, the waiter look with the white vest.
Yeah.
And all that.
Major D look.
I'll have to dig out my Your Filthy Little Mouth tour book. But there was just a different look and a different vibe, certainly with Van Halen all the time. But when you watch those outtake videos, there's an unbelievably, powerful, sexy, cool, super serious, yet life of the party sort of thing going on. And then somewhere the last 10, 15 years, it's, this, you're either trying to corralling him into a conversation or just let him go, like on Rogan or whatever, or just that, the MTV Music Awards thing where you're just like, man, I get you can't forever be cool, but you can kind of maybe be halfway towards. Do you know what I'm saying? It's the cringeworthy stuff that just gets, and it's so different as far as a look and demeanor and just that overall feel, for lack of a better word. I don't know if I'm making any sense there, but I think you're picking up what I'm putting down.
I am. You're saying that Scotch and Sofa was not his finest work. Do you remember Scotch and Sofa? That was the new single, which had 3 or 4 Instagram posts that were colored differently with a black and white photo in a short period. And we went, oh, is this from 2000 or is this from 95 or is this new? And that we got that. And then one thing we didn't talk about is he put out an Alligator Pants, quote unquote, demo. Last week. And without context, it doesn't mean anything, because if you haven't put out the whole John 5 Sessions things, then why are you putting out demos if there's not an album? You put out demos because the person's dead or because it's a box set. You don't put out demos for any other reason.
Or you put out demos when you put out a bunch of other things that certainly made sense as far as some sort of linear, for lack of a better word, kind of release pattern, right? Instead, it's just like, throw the dartboard, man. Throw the darts.
And then Kevin made a point, what we were saying about Wolfgang earlier. He needs that person that's going to go, no, and they fight. And then they have your Paige Plant or your Tyler Perry or
gee, who else?
Dave and Eddie and so forth, or your Doc and Lynch kind of thing. I agree. So
you need that push-pull dynamic.
So when before when Mr. Icy Hot, or they, them, him, her, it, whatever the pronouns of the Icy Hot may be, the Dave that we generally like is what Kevin was pointing out, where it's Dave plus a songwriter, and they kind of go back and forth to refine the whole thing. And the way that Dave's band is now, it is just hired help. Even though he has capable songwriters in that band.
It's the epitome of hired guns.
Yeah, so that might be another thing, because a point you've brought up on many a DLR cast is that the band was in the photo on Eat 'Em and Smile, and the band stopped being in the photo around Skyscraper. It was no longer a band. It was Dave and whoever he felt like working with.
And hired guys, yeah.
But John 5, it sounded like it was a band.
Yeah, and it sounded like it could have been in that direction, because the last guitar player, well, I mean, maybe it was going in that direction with Jason Becker for a minute, and sadly that couldn't continue.
I think that's the case. And a fellow no big ting maniac right there, Kevin. A thing of note, and this is not something that 99.99% of Dave fans will know or care about, but the guitarist who, I don't know if he was going to be the lead or just one of the three guitarists for the Vegas run and the Kiss run, is a guy named Chris Griotti. He was one of the three guitarists in the band. And these days, Chris is writing tons of hit songs and producing tons of hit songs for other people. He just happened to also be a hotshot guitar player. Like, look up Chris Griotti's credits, and you and I are going to go like, I don't listen to Willow Smith. Well, Willow Smith was an SNL musical guest and a Coachella headliner.
Yeah. Actually, I've heard a couple of there's some, it may have been the songs he co-wrote. There's some interesting stuff she's done.
And 2 or 3 of those songs feature bass playing by Ryan Wheeler from Dave's band.
So when you talk about I just thought of something, and this could be part of it too. You look at the bandmates, the guys who've been, basically the last 10, 15 years, whatever, the hired guns who, as opposed to say like the early 2000s.
Hey, Ramses,
we
love everything you do. Thank you for being you.
Absolutely.
So we cut you off, Steve's there.
No, I was thinking, I think there's the bands that he has been putting together, these hired gun guys, these guys where everybody goes, I don't know who they are. And most people don't know. I mean, I think there's 3 things really that kind of, okay. Let me back up for a minute. In a perfect world, Dave would be going out with the equivalent of like Kings of Chaos kind of dudes, right?
Sure.
Where
Martini or
Gilby Clark, so a bunch of guys, some really serious players. Hey, Billy Idol's putting out a record for the first time in 10 years, which if you listen to the last record was amazing in the EPs. I'm so glad he's doing new music and still doing music with Steve Stevens. But Steve Stevens comes to mind because, they did that corporate thing together. But ego, money, and inactivity, I think and maybe the last one, not so much because a lot of those guys aren't always active, but maybe ego and money, are 2 of the big reasons why you don't get any real big names playing with Dave, because I've thought about this a lot, and we should do an episode someday, kind of like a dream band thing. But think of all the people that you would go, that could be Dave. I would love to see Dave co-write with that guy. I would love to see Dave play with that guy. And it's not necessarily a Van Halen clone, but when you think of the stuff solo, I mean, one of those guys who can do that stuff and the Dave solo stuff, and maybe write some, co-write some cool stuff. And that was never going to happen.
So you mentioned Billy Idol a second ago, and I believe the 10 years or so ago album that he did before this one, I believe there was a Butch Walker co-write, or at least Butch in some way right.
I'm a huge Butch Walker fan.
Dave and Butch Walker. I mean, Butch Walker can get pop out of anyone. Butch Walker, if you said, do you want to write with Dave? He would in a heartbeat. He would in a second.
Right.
He could find the hit. He could find the voice. And could Andrew Watt? Probably. He made the Stones sound good. He made Pearl Jam sound good. He made McCartney sound good. He knows how to find people with limitations and highlight the good stuff in a Rick Rubin-like way, except he knows actually how to use the mixing board, unlike Rick Rubin. So what I'm getting at is there are people who could deal with that flavor of Dave. It's just he doesn't seem like he's up for it. And so when I interviewed 4 or 5 years ago Butch Vig, he told me that he was up for the Van Halen album that became A Different Kind of Truth. And he was talking with Dave Grohl, and he's like, I shouldn't do it. And Grohl's like, you should do it. And then they talked about it more, and he went, they're dysfunctional. No. Well, it makes you think, who else was in contention for that before it went to John Shanks? John Shanks was not anyone's number one choice.
No, I mean, I think everybody was going, what? Wow, really? But then again, what's kind of interesting about that? I'm reminded of the fact that before Dave came back in the band, and this was before Gary Sharon, weren't they working with Glenn Ballard?
That was the
producer Alanis Morissette.
And Man in the Mirror by Michael Jackson, which he wrote. And besides Alanis, Did Glenn Ballard produce Humans Being from Twister? I think he might have. And then on the album after Van Halen 3, I know that they were working with Danny Korchmar. How
There's
do you say his
another name.
name?
Yeah. I think it's Korchmar. Yeah.
I'm still kicking myself for interviewing Danny Korchmar and never asking any questions about Van Halen. I kind of annoyed him by telling him that he's really good at working with difficult artists who no one else can work with. And that he didn't like that. He's like, who do you mean? I said, well, Don Henley. Well, just because you think they're difficult. Okay.
It's kind of a compliment, Daryl. Come on, man.
I thought so. I thought the fact that I'm saying you can handle people that other people aren't able to handle, that shows that you're good in the studio. No, I insulted the dude and I'm so sorry. But there's a comment from Daryl, with all the plug and play band members, makes you think he might be a bit difficult to get along with. It goes back to what I was saying, where I could tell you really generous things that Dave does, and then I could tell you horrible things that I know he's done to people, but you never know which Dave you're going to get. And do you remember, Steve, on our Mark Elmer episode where Mark talked about he wasn't wearing odorless deodorant and he wasn't wearing socks, and they went out to Dave's car and he pulled out socks because he had a trunk of socks?
Right.
I've heard that equivalent of story with shirts with people within the last 10 years. Like, oh, Dave doesn't like that shirt. Here's a shirt. So what I want to know is how much stuff is in his trunk.
There's some serious diva stuff going on there. Like, and in defense of Dave, that's hundreds and hundreds of giant rock stars. I mean, look, get it. But still, so there's some oddities.
But still, what is in his trunk? Ramses, if you can start animating what you think is in Dave's trunk. Like, I know he's got a spare tire. I know he's got a first aid kit. Probably has jumper cables and emergency paddles and all that. But what else?
Dave's got some sort of prepper element there. I'm telling you. I mean, it's not like he went out with 30 Sherpas when he was doing the Jungle Stud sort of thing. I mean, I think there's some survivability talent there, right? Some knowledge.
Speaking of the Thailand trip, though, a little mystery that I'm trying to figure out, and then we'll recap, and then we'll go home. Okay, so one person we couldn't pick out in the photos because we knew Tom, we knew his manager Jerry, and then there was a gentleman named Jerry. And when I was watching that video that the Tank the Roadie put together, where he was talking about the people in the crew, he mentioned the guy who invented in-ear monitors that was on the Van Halen crew being Jerry. So I'm wondering if that's the guy that he brought along on the tour for the sake of knowing, oh, he can make sure the audio is fine with my videoing.
Interesting.
So do we know who Jerry is? Jerry number 2, that is.
Who is Jerry?
Who is Jerry number 2? Is that the new episode title? Who is Jerry number 2? Or is the name of this episode Thank You, the Icy Hot 66? Because that is a recurring theme as well. And Dave really doesn't play without. What's the upside of working with him? You get paid very well. He's very generous without notice about things. It's a good credit to have.
It's a cool gig. I mean, come on, you're playing probably some of your favorite rock songs ever.
But then you also don't know if you have a job later that day. The stories that I've heard from people, without naming names, on the Kiss run, somebody else was supposed to be rotated out and never found out that they were auditioning. The person that they were going to rotate in failed their tablet or Zoom-based audition. They choked and didn't get it. So the person continued playing on the gig without knowing they were about to be fired that day. It's that kind of... I'm
telling you, one of these days, there could be a show where it's like 2 bass players show up. Well, I thought I thought I was supposed to be... No, but did you... What? It could
That
happen.
happened with Ozzy at, I think, the US Festival, where Don Costa was in the band and they were trying to fire him and bring back Bob Daisley, and they never told Don Costa he was fired. It was either the US Festival 84 or some big US festival where that happened. It happens, sadly. And Daryl, is this what is in his truck? His trunk, swords, overalls, Capizio shoes, and one of those just one of those hats. Okay, to finish my thought right there.
Definitely overalls, and only one pair. Yes.
So what I've heard is when he gives you the replacement clothing item because he doesn't like what you're wearing, like he has it in every size and he has multiple colors. So for example, if he goes, I hate that shirt, you shouldn't be wearing that shirt. What size are you? And then he shows you a rack of all that size. That's what I heard from somebody when he didn't like their shirt. I don't know. So what if we learned today?
Celebrities and rock stars are really mercurial. That much we know. But I just want to mention one thing. You mentioned Thailand, and watching that video, safe to say, I mean, I'm watching Dave, obviously he's biking and there's some scenes where he's walking. I mean, he looks like he's always looks like he's in great shape.
Excellent.
But for a guy with 35 surgeries or whatever it is, I mean, that is not easy on the body, that much traveling, doing that much biking, going out. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, if he had some health problems, maybe they're past him now. Do you know what I mean? That's a lot of activity there.
I don't think he has health problems. And if
we're not going to see him doing any jumps and kicks, but I mean, it looks like he's moving pretty damn decent there.
Yeah, he's flexible. He's in good shape from the cosmetic sense. I wouldn't worry about that kind of stuff. But then when you read stuff like Gene Hackman today, who knows what's going on?
All right, I haven't seen anything since about I don't even want to go down that road, but you're probably alluding at things that I have not, because I haven't seen anything about that since about 2 or 3 o'clock, and I think the news has changed a bit. So
unfortunately. And there was a celebrity death yesterday of an actress who's 39.
39. Yes. I can't.
And that was I think she'd had a liver transplant.
Oof.
And so I think that we just never know until we see the obituary or the coroner's report. Because if Dave were on a red carpet today, if he were on that MTV VMAs 2021 that he did, he would just sidestep the question and be like, I look good and I feel good.
Right.
Like a juniper in August on a Miami. He would do that and deflect the whole thing. He wouldn't go, oh, my sciatica is terrible.
Right. Right.
Because you remember his whole blow up with Eddie at the 96 VMAs
was about your hip.
Said you can have hip surgery. You just don't complain publicly.
Right. So I'm not going to complain about my impending hip surgery. And before this turns into, 2 aging Jews from Long Island discussing their ailments.
Yes. Before that's what it turns into. The bottom line is we're amazed by the new content that has come out. We're looking forward to more content. If there is more content, M3 Festival, if you're going, let me know. Happy to say hey. Happy to meet up.
I'm going. I thought there was some urgency on me getting my tickets, but
if you don't want to be,
I'm going to take care of that this weekend.
If you don't want to be in the first 50 rows, you can keep waiting. But the Wolfgang appearance on Billy Corgan's great. That's a great podcast. The Tank the Roadie thing had some interesting stuff. The Darren Householder thing was pretty good. We didn't even talk about there's rumors of other people writing tell-alls about Van Halen. We didn't talk about the wrestler who has Frankenstyle designed tights. There's more to come, folks.
We covered a lot.
So thanks to everyone who's still bearing with us.
Thanks for all the comments, guys. This live stuff is always fun. It's really great fuel, and it's fun to see.
And a bunch of you are great podcasters in your own right and content creators. Ramses, we love the man from Cabo, the Mojo Dojo, all your different names. We love the David Lee Roth News Desk. We love T-Bone's podcast. We love Halenville. We love. I don't think Daryl has one. He should. I don't think the Icy Hot has one, but they should. JJ Suarez, I don't think does.
You just reminded me. I got to head over to the Mojo Dojo and listen to Baker Street for about the 25th time. And went on a real jack. listen to that song over a period of a couple days. I'm playing it for my wife. I'm like, do you remember this song? Well, who's that? I kid you not. So,
and then we also left out Eric Senich and Booked on Rock, and there is the gentleman behind Halenville. Thank you, Fruitcake Tony. They have a lot of trivia on their shows, and you win guitar picks if you can get that trivia. So, got to support your local Fruitcake Tony, who will be at M3. Anyone we've left out before we let everyone go, Steve?
I think we got everybody. This has been fun.
Nothing but yeah. If there's anything we're missing or we're wrong about, you know where to find us. And Daryl, you're right. That is a way to end a podcast.
Oh, God.
Thank you, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.